It's episode 11 of Museum in Lotus. My God, this is episode 11.
Time flies.
Yeah. And you know what? Today you must like and share, and you really want to watch because the past few episodes we've been talking about Japan, things that you can appreciate here in Lotus of Water, but you cannot buy. But that's why we have Mr. Josephine and Joseph to explain, expert in all these areas to bring out the value of what's going on so we can all enjoy it. But today is special because we are flying to somewhere else. It's partly Japan. We're going to set off from Japan, am I right?
Exactly.
That will still explain why there's sushi on this beautiful table. But we're going to fly across the Pacific Ocean to the United States of America, to USA. Am I right?
Absolutely, yes.
Wow. I've never flew across the Pacific Ocean before. But you know, majority of the episodes that we have done was mainly in Asia. Actually, all in Asia, sorry.
Exclusively Asia.
Burma, we did.
We did Laos.
Laos.
India.
India, yeah.
Yes.
Burma. Tibet, yeah.
And Tibet.
Yeah, and China, the chairs we are on.
Of course, China.
So we are going to venture to somewhere, a new region, a new territory today. What do you call the new world? Actually, it's really the new world, yeah?
New world.
Yeah, we're going to fly to America. That means that we'll be crossing from Japan, which is pretty much the border of our dear Asia, to America.
To America.
That means that there is actually connection between Japan and America.
There are certainly connections.
Right.
Absolutely. Historical connections.
Historical connections.
And again, the cross-reference between the two countries, which may not appear evident, but actually they are evident. And actually, when we look at this beautiful plate, Meiji period, with this fine arrangement of sushi, there's always a connection. There's also a connection here.
So today we're really talking about the connection between, what do you call that, America and Japan. Now, last week we had sushi. This week we're also having sushi. Why? Even though we're flying to America. I think this sushi that we have here is something that is special. But I think a lot of people would already know it. If I say the names, I know this sushi, but you might know it. You do not know the history behind this. These sushis are what we call California rolls or California sushi. So this is California rolls and this is California sushi. A sushi that's named with the name of California in the front. Have you thought that it's actually quite weird? Why?
Actually, I never explained why the California came before the sushi.
Yeah?
So I don't actually know the reason, to be honest.
So this sushi that we have, please enjoy your sushi with a little bit of laurent-perrier champagne.
We will.
Yeah. So this will be familiar. This is what we call the California roll or the California maki. It comes in a roll. You chop it up into bite-sized pieces.
Yes.
Sorry. It just cannot go wrong. Now what happened was that since we are talking about the connection between Japan and America, in about 1960s and 70s after World War II, so the two countries got closer. In 1971, or plus minus, there starts the first Japanese restaurants in America. So, of course, food like sushi will definitely be brought over and introduced to the American public. As usual, as like many things, when once a concept goes over to somewhere, and they will try to localize it, blend it to the people's flavor. So when it was set up in California, there came the first invention of California sushi or California roll. The difference is that Japan, as you can see, as you have learned many episodes from how the tanzi, the chess is, how the tea chess, how is it, the simplicity but super refined is the taste of what it means to be Zen, the level that the Japanese are going for the art. So that's important. But when you go to America, as you know, they tend to be a bit louder. The taste, the palate tends to be heavier, right? So can you imagine they just take something simple and do it as sushi and they eat? It's not really their style. So when they were in California, they came up with this thing called a California sushi. And you can get it anywhere in the world now. But the amazing thing about this sushi is that it has a lot of things inside. There's supposed to be avocado. There's supposed to be crab meat, imitation crab meat. Then you have mayonnaise and all these things. There's a lot of heavy materials that you might not find in traditional Japanese sushi style. So this was invented in America, California, even though they got the concept of sushi from Japan. So the cross-culture, you have been eating it every single day.
Are the Japanese eating this kind of sushi these days?
Okay, the weird thing is that, or the funny thing is that now if you go to Japan, and you say, so some of you who have went to Japan before, you say, no, when I went to Japan, the California maki, this is on the menu. Yeah, it's a reverse import because it got so famous, everyone loved it so much. So Americans, they taste Japanese food. It was so tasty, they said, okay, let me finally go and visit Japan. And they find that they will go there and ask, oh, is there Californian roll? Is there Californian maki? So many people ask, then they have no choice but to import this back to Japan. So if you go to Japan now, you can also find California maki, California rolls, California sushis, and so on. So it's a reverse import. Concept of sushi left Japan to America. They blend it with their own taste. It became California sushi, and then it got re-import back into Japan. That is what's going on with the food and culture we're talking about. But today we are not just talking about food, right?
No, we're talking about something, I believe, very special.
Is this dining table is in front of us? This is special because we didn't use the utensils as a table this time around. We got a table, okay? The highlight of today, one of the highlights today is actually a table in front of us. But I remember last episode that we were showing the vase, and Mr. Pino said that maybe he can demonstrate this ikebana thing, which a lot of our dear clients, dear viewers, last week after that asked that they cannot imagine how this vase can be served as an ikebana too. They cannot imagine how it is a flower vase, to be honest. So probably at the end of this show, or near the end of this show, we will have the chance to see how Mr. Pino does it.
I will only attempt, please forgive me for all the mistakes that I will certainly make, but I will give you an idea what the art form of ikebana means. And if we had a Japanese, he or she would do a fantastic job because they really have it in their blood.
Right.
In terms of proportion, in terms of Zen look, and everything else that is connected to the ikebana art. I mentioned last time there are 3,000 schools of ikebana in Japan, and almost each one has its own philosophy, its own style of arrangement of the flowers, and this goes back to the 7th century when the Japanese started to offer flower arrangements to the image of Buddha. So it has something sacred, and therefore it's been evolving to a form of art. Not any difference from paintings, not any difference from pure art pieces in Japan. So I will only try. Again, I need to be forgiven for all the mistakes that I would definitely make, but it's just to give you a simple demonstration how a beautiful vase, iron vase of the Showa period, 1960-1970, will look with just one flower, and a couple of leaves, which I will show you later.
But the experience, then we can get to see what it means to do ikebana.
Yes.
And because last week we were talking about the Tao, the Zen, the path, right? So we will get the experience in today. But of course, when we fly from Japan to America, as I said, that's why you should pay attention to this episode. We are talking about this table that we have here. Am I right?
Yes.
This is a table that most of you have not seen before. We took it out just for this show. And this table is the highlight.
I think it deserves all the attention of the viewers. And as I will enter the details, we will recognize the value of this table, which I would call an occasional table.
It's not a dining table.
It's not a dining table, although
we are eating sushi.
Perfectly what we're actually doing and tasting some beautiful sushi. Occasional table would also mean that possibly this would be used in a beautiful, imagine 1930s, 1920s New York apartment, where on top of this table, which need to be seen in its entirety, there would be a vase there will be a bronze sculpture or anything of artistic value.
Which means that, what do you mean by occasional table?
Occasional table would not be used on an everyday basis, only on specific occasion, which could be what we're actually having. If we're having a tea, we would possibly use this. It's
For this occasion.
For this occasion. It's not used on a daily basis.
Okay.
Occasional is for an occasion, occasional table. And it doesn't have the height of a dining table, which would definitely be higher.
True.
And all the proportion when we look are absolutely fantastic.
Right.
The simplicity of the table. And I would like to illustrate it.
Right. Which, before we do, you mentioned a few things. I'm not sure whether you captured it. Is that, number one, this was made in USA. This was from USA.
Absolutely USA.
So this piece of antique, we have flew across the Pacific Ocean to the coast of USA. This table that we have here, it's a USA table.
Yes.
And the age of this table, you mentioned 20s, 30s.
Correct.
So it's in the 1920s, 1930s.
Which basically is the period, typical period that a historian would identify as Art Deco.
Oh.
And Art Deco goes from the 1920s, 1926, from up to 1940s.
Right.
That is the period of Art Deco. And actually, Art Deco comes after Art Nouveau. And Art Nouveau basically was born in France. It holds the French word Art Nouveau. Nouveau means new art.
New art.
New art, which was then interpreted in various countries, which actually gave even a different name. Let me tell you, for the Italian, the period of Art Deco is called Liberty.
That is liberalized. That means it's a break free from the...
Yes, but liberty is an English word, and when we think about London, for instance, where I lived for many years, there was one particular beautiful building, again in the Art Deco style, and Liberty is a company that used to sell Art Deco pieces.
I see.
And that is basically wallpaper, it would be textile, it would be furniture, it would be anything related to that specific period. Art Deco, 1926 to 1940. And this is subsequent to the Art Nouveau.
Wow, that's quite a bit of a concept to capture, but we can have an estimate that this table that we have here, occasional table used for special occasions, while we are using this to eat sushi from America, USA, and probably about 1920s, that means they're about 80 to 100 years old.
Yes.
And Mr. Pino has mentioned that it can actually hold, because it's an occasional table, so it can actually hold a bronze sculpture. It can also hold probably a,
ceramic,
or you can hold a vase that has excellent floral arrangement. That might explain the weight of this table, huh? Because I was shifting over here, it is extremely heavy.
It is heavy. It is heavy. Yes.
So the base is solid. The base is very solid. It's very heavy. No wonder. So it's placed there. Probably a huge sculpture is placed on top. It's amazing. And when you explain like that, of course, you're going to illustrate what's going on. I have a feel about the certain fine details on what's going on with the table and why they made it like that. Once you explain the function.
Let me also mention something which I believe is significant and why this piece is here.
Okay.
There's a logic to it.
Yep.
Now, let me tell you, I mentioned about Art Deco.
Yeah.
Art Deco basically follows Art Nouveau. But what happened before that? Before that, there was a beautiful movement which was developed almost exclusively in UK and United States of America. And that is called arts and craft.
Huh.
Arts and craft. Where does the art and craft comes, why it came about, and what was the inspirational motive to this movement?
Okay.
We won't believe it. In the last 20 years of 1800s, United States of America made contact with Japan.
Yes.
And it started to open up Japan.
Yes.
And therefore, the designers, the architects, and the artists were absolutely in love with the simplicity of the items that the Japanese used to make. And this was all craft, delicately made by hand, with fine lines, Zen type. So all the movement of what we see here, Art Deco has the ancestor going back to Japan. So that's the next that exists between this table and what we see here, a Meiji period.
I see. Okay. Just to break it down. Okay, probably a more sip of champagne. It's a heavy knowledge thing. I am not sure whether you got it all. That's why we need some champagne and good sushi. I see that you have elaborated the whole connection between everything. I can see it, I can hear it. So what Mr. Pino was saying that before the movement of 1920s, and there was another movement called Art Nouveau, which is like new art. And the basis of all these movements, including this table where the entire table came from, it's a period that's called arts and craft. Arts and craft. And this period, this arts and crafting was actually heavily influenced by Japan. And we bring back the whole, this is really a good summary to the entire Japan series, because if you remember, Meiji period started in 1868, a new blur, 1868, and that was actually when the Americans knocked on the door of Japan and forced them to open up, and Japan modernized from there. So naturally, there was a lot of cross-cultural influence. They brought back to USA a lot of Japanese influence, including what Mr. Pino just said, how the art is, the simplicity, the zenness of it, and it gradually evolved into table that we see today. And that's how we are flying from Japan across the Pacific to the coast of USA. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay, that's a great summary. Yeah. Okay.
Great summary. Absolutely. Well done.
Okay. Luckily, I was a scholar, so I can understand and capture.
I mean, it's complex. I perfectly understand, but the links have to be very clear.
Yes.
So that we can explain why tonight we fly to America.
I see. Yes.
And what America has in connection with Japan and vice versa. So you started by qualifying about this California rolls,
yes,
and it came very natural. And my understanding now of California, which was not there before, it's very clear.
Yeah. Yeah. So next time when you go to a Japanese restaurant and you look at the menu and you see a California roll, you would know that that item, though not born in Japan, was influenced hugely by Japan with a Californian twist to it, which makes it so famous that now it's all around the world that people have forgotten that it was actually made in USA.
Correct.
So this table, made in USA, you're trying to tell us that this table over here, this huge table and heavy one, was Japanese influenced.
If we look at the ancestor, I would definitely say yes, because of the art and crafts movement. And incredible, during the Art Nouveau, but even before that, the timber that were used, you won't believe it, were oak, and this is an oak table.
This is an oak table.
This is an oak table and mahogany.
Right.
So a further element of the chain, as I mentioned earlier, between the timber and what in the art and craft movement the artisan used to use again. And I think it's amazing.
Right, right. So they got the idea and adapted with their own taste, the American taste, into this table.
Into this table.
That's why we see that this table has a little bit of the essence of the simplicity, that zenness to it. But once again, back to the arts and crafting that were focused on the material and the workmanship and so on. I see. What else should we pay attention to when we are admiring this table?
There are many, many features, I have to say. It looks simple.
Yeah.
You know, it's a round table with a base. What else is there to say?
But as you mentioned, last week, a lot of things that seem simple
are actually complex.
Are actually complex and sophisticated and many layers of influence to it.
which you can hardly detect. But if we put what I say, the magnifying glass,
Okay.
and I start to examine, then we see the complexity of the simplicity. It seems almost a contrast of words, but this is exactly what it is. Simplicity is not simple, very difficult to achieve. And in this table, whoever made it had a beautiful sense of proportion, a sense of zen, a sense of elegance, which is all grouped in this beautiful table.
Okay.
Let's go to a simple description, which I hope it's not boring,
Okay.
but I think it's very useful for the purpose of illustrating what this occasional oak table of the 1926, as I mentioned earlier, which is the Art Deco. Let's look at the base.
Okay,
The base seems to be having three pedestals.
Right.
One is a very simple one, which is the base.
Okay.
That goes all around, and this is a square base.
Yes.
Now, in contrast to the simple base, we have two sort of frames. And here the frames have a sort of a wave type of shape, which we see here.
Oh, there. Okay, yeah.
Which you can hardly see, but if you come, and I suggest that you come, because this would be a nice knowledge that you bring home, and you will touch it, you will actually feel that these two frames actually are one receding in respect of the other, and they're culminating in a square column. Now, when you look at the square column, this is the only decoration that we would see, which is fluted square column. And this element would be seen even in buildings in United States of America, which is little features which are reproduced in this very simple table, although complex for the reason that I've explained earlier.
Yeah, are they Greek-Roman inspired?
Absolutely.
So it's like a Greek-Roman column.
Greek-Roman column, square column. So we've started with the square, now we go again to the square, but a much lighter, if you see, because of the proportion, column. And on top of the column, you will be able to see there are four, I would call them arms.
Yep.
The four arms have different directions.
Right.
And when we look at the arms, we see that they're curled at the bottom and at the top. And each of the arm from the square column protrude outwards, and they do this in order to support the round table. Before we go to the round table and we describe it, I just want to sort of pause for 1 second.
Okay.
Let's look at the table. The table is solid, as we can possibly see, but then because of this arms, which to me, and only to me, almost like the necks of swans, elegant. I can actually see these necks of the swans floating on a river. What else? Beautiful white swans. And the beauty again, it's not only in the similarity that I see, but it's the void.
Oh, yeah.
The space that, look at the building these days. Many of the architects have voids. In other words, spaces which are not occupied. Because if the building in its entirety would be filled, you would not have that sense of lightness. And this provides the sense of lightness. When we go then to the top, we have several frames, beautifully made, which bring us to the top of the table.
Yes.
And when we go to the top of the table, what we see here, we see 4 quadrants.
Yes.
And these 4 quadrants are basically evidenced because of slightly different colors. They all meet perfectly in the center.
Which means the whole precision, it looks simple, But the calculation and how precise the workmanship is remarkable.
Remarkable. This was an order by a very wealthy family for something very special they wanted to put on top, representing the essence of the art
Deco movement. You see the Greek pillar, we have Japanese influence, Zen style, and we have because it feels the geometry and how the lines are, the precision to it, to show off per se, the workmanship. And the precision thing is also a concept of Japanese thing.
Yes.
This simple table, actually, it's not that simple after all.
It's not that simple. And mostly, till this day, I find exquisite beauty in something so simple, occasional table.
Yeah.
Possibly in the room where it was located. It was not the most prestigious of the pieces of furniture, but still. Let's imagine what we would see in that room. Let's imagine what it would be on top of this. We have to really push our imagination to figure out how would this table be located and how prestigious it was as the family that ordered it.
I see. Okay. Well, now it's full of sushi. But I can imagine in the past, as you were saying, that. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
For illustrating.
Thank you.
I can imagine that because we carried over to over here this morning. It's actually very heavy. It requires about 1.5 to 2% to strength to carry this. So it can definitely hold a solid bronze sculpture.
Yes.
It is in itself like a pillar, strength like a pedestal, but they make it into a table. So you can have a bronze sculpture. You can imagine there's a lady maybe pouring water, that kind of sculpture.
Yes.
Or I think we see some kind of design like this in hotels, in more classical hotels now. They have a huge thing, and then they have flower arrangement that's huge thing on top to bring out the magnificence of it. Probably is that it's either in a room or when you step into the house, then you have that, it's not even a living room yet. It's like a entrance, it's a concierge thing.
Yes.
And this thing is right smack in the middle, and there's a whole flower arrangement there. So people walk around this thing and into the living hall.
You made a very valid point. I don't exclude that maybe in the middle of a room with a beautiful flower arrangement, this would stand in a magnificent way and would allow visitor to look at it and to go around and admire all the details.
Okay. So we speak about flower arrangement so much. We should admire your flower arrangement skill. Of course, the key thing is to see how this piece of, we have already seen how this piece of antique comes to life. Not too far from us, 80 to 100 years, but a lot has happened in these 80 to 100 years, We will come back to this age that's called 1920s again, which is a great age. And when we have antiques over here, we talk about it. We want it to bring you back to the times of prosperity, and this is one time as well. But we talk about flower arrangement. We want to see how the Japanese vase, the antique vase, comes to life again. Do you have enough champagne for that?
It's never enough, but I think at this point in time I can do with no champagne for a few minutes so that I can possibly give you the view. Again, you have to forgive me. It may not turn up to the level that I would personally like, but it's just to show you.
Now is the time to tell our friends come watch, because there's going to be a live ikebana demonstration by Mr. Pino. Right. Okay, so this is heavy stuff. We know that.
This is iron.
This is heavy stuff. Yeah.
Very heavy stuff.
Okay.
Again, beautiful the patination. Okay. Look how the two colors, the sort of bronze look, but it's not bronze. I said it is iron, and on top of that, we look at the beauty of the details.
Yes.
The details of this table have been illustrated. We've illustrated the details of this wonderful vase last time. Again, let's see what the ikebana arrangement would possibly look like. Yeah, I just brought one flower.
Okay.
And simplicity. And again, what has to talk is the vase, but what has to talk is the flower per se.
I will enjoy champagne and narrate while Mr. Pino works on the ikebana arrangement.
So the first
it's a good arrangement, huh? You do ikebana, I drink champagne.
But I'm not good with ikebana. So we are pouring inside the water.
Right. Okay.
Sufficient amount of water.
Right.
Then
ikebana, as we know and we mentioned last week, is the Dao. In Chinese, it's called Hua Dao. So in English, they call it the art of flower arrangement, but actually a more precise way to explain or translate it is actually the Dao of flower arrangement, the path, the zone. That means people who are grandmasters of this, they are into the zone. I mean, Mr. Pino, you know, with your tuxedo and holding the flower like that, doing flower, you look like a master already. Yeah.
I am not. I am not. So what I suggest, you look at the height.
Okay.
And only when you decide exactly the point and what you want to see, and what I'm trying to achieve is to see this flower, but it has to be cut at the lower level. This is the way that I would, so that every single detail is shown. So we need to do a little bit of cutting.
Okay.
And this is exactly what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Okay.
And that determines the height, huh?
This is the height, which I think is quite good.
Nice,
All right. But we need to enhance, in my opinion, the green. So I've brought along two very simple green leaves, which we put in front. And this is what possibly an ikebana arrangement would look like. I suggest, all our viewers, you just need to buy one flower. You just need to buy a simple vase.
Okay.
And give it a try.
I see.
Buy pruning scissors, like I've shown you, and try. You will not be possibly good, as I am not good the first time, but as you try and you continue to try, it will get better and better. And
getting into the Tao eventually, huh? Getting the Tao of it, which like when we mentioned, like when the craftsman made this vase, it was in the zone. When the artist made this art decor table made in USA, he was in the zone.
Yes.
Same likewise for the tanzi, same likewise for the tea tanzi. And just like what Master Yun has been doing to his art, when he's painting, when he's creating all these art pieces, he was and he is in the zone as well.
Yes.
All the Taos, they connect, like how we see the Tao of sushi making travels to California, and we have delicious California maki rolls, adapted it, and then somehow it was so amazing that Japan re-imported it. The Tao, if it's true, it can connect to different people and different languages and culture. Do you agree with this?
I think I do. I do.
Right? I think there are some. I think there might be still some ultimate truths and beauty in the world. You know, with the democratization of many things, a lot of people stop believing in common truths and common beauty. But I think they still do exist.
I think without beauty, we would not be recognized as human beings. Beauty is the fire that each one of us has.
Yes.
It's internal. We just need to brush it up.
Okay.
Allow it to come out.
Right.
And that is a way of inspiring ourselves. And that's the reason why I admire all of those people who come here. They get totally inspired by Master Yun art.
Yes.
Which is very special. And again, bringing it home is not only for the beautiful function that it can have in terms of feng shui, but just looking at it every single day, it would just give you a different note of music, which is, again, so amazing.
Indeed.
So beautiful.
Indeed. Indeed. You know, you mentioned about having our friends to try this ikebana thing at home. But you know, I think what might be even a more luxurious opportunity that we are going to offer to you, offer to them, is that this vase has significant historical value.
Yes.
Right? So what I would like to invite you to do is we're going to place this vase right in the front, in front of, because you mentioned sometime back the Ikebana was done to offer to the Buddhas and so on, right? So we're going to put it in the gallery, this vase. If you come by, you can get yourself one, you go somewhere and get yourself one stalk of flower and you can put it in. And we can see what kind of art they come up with.
I am sure. And maybe a photograph should be taken and then placed on Facebook. Why not?
Yeah, and you know, it's going to be a teamwork of art, because one person is going to come here, one of you is going to come here to put one stalk of flower. The next person will come here, they will complement it, they will put a second stalk and so on. So let's see how it turns out to be over the next few days. We will regularly keep the flowers in check. And so if you come by the gallery, come to this VIP gallery and you can offer your flowers to the sculptures that we have here. And let's see what kind of arts that we all come up with. It can be a teamwork art piece. A lot of artists are involved to making it work.
And I think it's the right place, if I'm allowed to say, especially museum in Lotus.
Right.
It's the right place for pure inspiration. So get inspired. Look at the art that surrounds you. Get that art into your body, into your heart, and then create something. Don't have any expectation.
Yeah.
If you don't try, you will never be able to see what your hands are able to do. Right.
Okay. I see friends here, some of them be saying hi to us, but because we are too engrossed in sushi and ikebana. Ethan says hi. Serene Su says good evening. We have Man Leong, Joyce New, Cynthia, Ashley who are watching with us. Betsy says hi to both of us.
Thank you.
And Helen Sim is with us today. So once again, Yvonne, Geraldine, Eileen, Jenny, and so on. And Vicky Siying, hi everyone. So what I mentioned just now, can go spread the good word. We're going to place this vase here in the gallery, offer it to the sculptures, the Buddhas and so on. Now if you come by, bring along one stalk of flower and let's have a combined effort to make this art piece come to life again. Because after I see what Mr. Pino has done to this Japanese antique vase, I mentioned last week that I thought this vase a bit alien looking because it doesn't look, I was sharing with Mr. Pino, it doesn't look very alien. It looks antique. Yes, it looks antique, but it looks a bit alien as well. But now when you match it together with our dear art decor table, then probably it makes a lot of sense. Probably it was made in that period, but was it in Japan? That it was made in Japan, but did it stay in Japan? That might be a question, you know. Probably they transferred out of Japan to fit the necessary art requirements back then in different countries. So once again, the cultures and the art sense, they can cross. Just like Master art, because as I was saying that if there's truth in art sense, you know, we can always appreciate on what's going on. Like when Master paintings and Master art goes overseas, not everyone can immediately understand the basis of Chinese culture. But when they look at it, they can feel something and they can say that this makes me happy.
Exactly, this makes me happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a common thing that I think is still common and possibly common among human beings, despite of color, despite of language and cultural barriers, right? Just like this thing. That's why I want all of us, if you can, come by and let's do a team effort on this Ikebana thing. I'm curious to see how it will turn out to be.
Just like to go back many years when I lived in London.
Right.
And I used to walk along Kensington Church Street. And Kensington Church Street in London is one of the best small streets where there are all sorts of high-class antique dealers. And I remember there was one specific dealer who was exclusively interested and exclusively displaying art and craft.
The antiques of this movement and before?
Before this movement.
Before this movement.
Yes. And there were other dealers. So I was stunned by it. And I remember in one occasion, I saw a beautiful chair, which I tried to buy, but it was impossible because of the price. And this was the work of Rennie Mackintosh. It's a very tall chair made out of oak of exquisite taste. Then from the art and craft shop, I would possibly walk, and after 2 or 3 shops, I would find an Art Nouveau shop again with beautiful things. And the dealer was kind enough to let me understand how the movement from art and craft evolved in England to Art Nouveau, and then Art Deco. And I remember that was mainly European Art Deco. I have never seen a table of Art Deco from the States. So I'm thrilled that in this collection, there's such a significant piece of beauty and simplicity.
Right. So I'm not sure how long this Art Deco table will be in the gallery. I'm not sure. So if you come by, you can take a look at it, but please be gentle with it because, as I told you, all this from the Meiji chest to the Cha Tanzi, it's antique, come on, yeah? Okay, so please be gentle as you observe because I think Mr. Pino has highlighted many different unique points about the table, from the Greek pillar to how the arms look like swans. And this, I think they are super worthy to come by to the gallery to inspect it, to appreciate it yourself. As Mr. Pino has said, there might be a lot of art deco and Art Nouveau antiques and artifacts from Europe, but from America, much less.
Much less.
Okay.
Much, much less. I mean, it was available, and I'm sure living in New York, I would possibly be able to see more than what I saw when I lived in UK. But for me, it's a great surprise to see, admire, and connect this piece to Japan and Meiji period.
Right.
And what was the element, as I mentioned earlier, the chain between the two cultures and the two countries, in spite of the fact they're so distant one from the other.
Yes. So, curiosity's sake, when were you in England?
I was in England between 1987 to 1990, when I then came from London to Singapore for the first time.
1990.
1990, I was here for the first time, and I stayed on for 3 years. So that was an eye-opener for me.
In London?
In London, because I was able, within, I would say, the 3 years, to open up my eyes, to understand without the need of reading books and books, to experiment, to touch, to get the explanation by the dealer of those little details which create your encyclopedia in your mind. And you can always make reference, and you can always distinguish the influence of one period versus the other.
Which means we remember that in 1970-71, when you first started out as a banker,
yes,
you borrowed money from your father to buy the first set.
You're making me feel ashamed, but that
well, you pay him back in less than a month's time.
Pay,
yeah.
But you know, after you get your first salary, you go and borrow money. There's something totally insane.
Well, it was a good habit. It's not anything that's
well,
obscene,
it was a good, bad habit. But I appreciated that I was not refused the loan. That is something that I'm very grateful.
This passion about understanding more about antiques and antiquities started in 1970s.
Yes.
And even when you traveled when you were working with the same bank anyway, right?
Yes, yeah. With the same bank.
And you were transferred to London, this passion continued, and you will always go for the hunt.
Yes.
In those areas, and that's where you gather your knowledge and expertise.
Yes.
Which means that it's a very good, as you're mentioning, it's a very good referencing thing because you will be able to connect with dealers in Florence, dealers in Hong Kong, dealers in Singapore, dealers in London and so on. Dealers in, do they have dealers in Australia? Do they have it?
I also lived in Australia. There are dealers.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that it's heavily influenced, was heavily influenced Australia, but the British who actually transferred there for business, and they brought with them their own possessions. So you would see some Edwardian tables, you would see some beautiful objects.
I see.
Yes.
Hong Kong must be very vibrant with all this Hollywood, am I right?
Hollywood Road, you really know about.
I was born in Hong Kong because
oh, I
I
see.
was born in Hong Kong.
And then Cat Street. I mean, they're very, very nearby. And again, where antique dealers are. And one of my way of connecting with the relevant place where I work is through the arts. It gave me maybe balance. I mean, it's opposed and it has very little to do with the kind of banking work, which was the professional aspect of my activity.
Right.
And then you see these beautiful objects and you fall completely in love. And most of them, they could not be purchased because extremely expensive. But to have seen them is magical. And tonight, we're seeing two beautiful pieces in this setting.
Yes.
You don't need to go to a museum. You see these paintings. You see this Meiji period chest. You see this 1920 Art Deco pieces.
Right.
Chauvet. You know, this beautiful variety, which all is just like a pencil that is sharpened and allows you to detect and to appreciate the beauty of different objects from different cultures.
I see. I have, the more I ask, the more since I'm on this topic, I have more questions to ask. I have one more question to ask you. This time it's running short and I've got to talk about this 1920s thing. How do you know, because you're an expert in this, so I have to ask you, how do you know it's real? I mean, antique, you know, there's a lot of fakes around.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You see, if this was not it was a fake, it would not have the sign of age that you can clearly see. This is in very good condition, but not perfect condition.
Yes, yes.
But you can see some dents here and there, which basically mean that it has been used. You look at the word that I repeat at nausea, which is the patina.
Yeah.
This kind of patina you cannot get from a new piece.
Right.
The proportion.
Right.
I mean, unless somebody really copies, and even if it's copied to perfection, this kind of oak was oak of the 20s. The oak of these days would be totally different. This has not opened up in any particular, and to make a table like this these days would cost a fortune.
Right. Okay, I think we're very fortunate. And of course, with Mr. Pino's expertise, we know what's going on. We keep on talking about this table, so 1920s. When you say 1920s, something spark off in my mind that we actually have a saying or a period. You mentioned that it's called the Art Deco period.
Yes.
But it's also called the Roaring 20s.
Roaring 20s.
I'm not sure whether you will understand that there's this period called the Roaring 20s. Have you watched, are you a movie person?
I do like movies. I don't go to cinema as frequently as I would possibly like, also because of the COVID.
Yeah.
But I do like cinema.
A couple of years back, they made this movie that's called The Great Gatsby, but it's based on the novel. Yeah.
Yes.
Based on the novel, and then they make it into a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire in it. The Great Gatsby is that if you look at the style, they were talking about their age, which is actually the Roaring 20s. So what they call it the Roaring 20s, if I'm right, is because it was the times when America was super prosperous. That was before the onset of the Great Depression or whatever that is. So it was a time of prosperity. And it was a time of jazz music, even though there was prohibition, but it was full of booze, full of a good art, full of good wine, good spirits. That's the sign of the ages, which means that this table that we have with us today, simple as it might look, but it came from the Roaring 20s period of the United States of America, which means that this is also a table of roaring prosperity.
Look at the building in New York in Chicago, and in other major city in America built during the Art Deco, and how their iconography represented the richness of America.
Yes.
And the Japanese admire the progression of the Americans. So it's something really special that happened in America in those periods.
Right, right.
And this is before the Second World War.
Right. So, you know, since this is a table of prosperity, we talk about these chests, the Tanzi chest is a chest of prosperity.
It definitely is.
And for a family to actually own a tea chest that is of such a magnitude and precision and details, for sure it also came from a family of super prosperous status. We're going to put this here for a while, for the next couple of days, so people can come and hear and enjoy and take a look at all these symbols and all these artifacts of prosperity. While you can come here with a stock of flour or something that you can put it, combine effort, and make this vase, this antique vase, come to life again. So there's a lot of things you can do in the gallery. Come here and appreciate Mastuin's art, appreciate all this art decor, this table of prosperity, the chest of prosperity, and so on, and to do Ikebana together.
Common denominator, I would like to say.
Yeah, it's a common denominator. And
it's wealth, excellent, beauty, simplicity.
Yes.
All of these pieces, including, of course, Master Yoon's art.
Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
sharing. I'm not sure where we are flying to next week, but I'm sure we're going to bring something that's interesting to show you, to share with you, so you can appreciate it, but cannot buy, here back in Lotus on Water. Cheers, cheers.
Cheers.
See you next week.
See you next week.